Welcome to the Grow Renaissance podcast. Let's nourish the world.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. On this episode, we have Jon Madsen, who is a legal wizard for everything blockchain, everything that we are doing to try and decentralize the global ag economy and put the power back in the hands of producers who are putting in their blood, sweat, and tears to grow food, to nourish the world and regenerate the soils that we live on, and then also us as consumers. So I'm really excited to have Jon on today, because as we dive into the mechanisms that we leverage here at Grow on the blockchain and words like DGF and nodes and decentralization, a lot of times we don't know what that means. And we don't know, is this a new system? Is it an old system? And what are the legal ramifications for even being involved or a community member? And what are some of those definitions? So we have Jon on today to kind of go through that structure, talk us through some of the amazing things about it. And before we get into the nitty gritty of it, Jon, thank you for being here. Maybe give the audience a little bit of background on who you are and your path of how you got into being into blockchain and the things that we do now.
Yeah, cool. I'm an attorney. Before that, I was an engineer, and which was really fun. And that has given me a lot of tech background. And so for several years, I did a lot of patents. I worked with a lot of inventors. I actually wrote some blockchain patents and got really into the technology. I've been following blockchain and its development for several years, and about 3 years ago, did a pivot in my law practice to focus almost exclusively on blockchain and really what that means. And Grow has a very cool technology stack that is shared by a few other companies that supports what people refer to as proof of action. And there's different consensus mechanisms in blockchain. And what we do as a law firm and what I do as an attorney is help steer companies like Grow to make sure they're releasing products, blockchain-based products that play nice with decentralized platforms. And so Grow, the blockchain, is a decentralized platform that Grow United, the company, doesn't control. And I think Will's probably told everyone, Grow can't control the blockchain. It can't control the token. It can't control how distribution operates. It can't, turn on and off nodes. That's not what Grow the company does. Grow the company produces products in the ag space that operate with a blockchain that open up huge potential. And so as a node owner, I think what I try to do is steer the node owners into what are the rights associated with node ownership? How is that tied into a community of node owners under a DGF, which we can talk about? And then how does Grow play in? And what I mean by Grow is Grow the company. And what is Grow the company doing? So everyone understands where that is, because the goal and the power in this is the decentralization that comes from operating in a blockchain space.
Can you expand on that a little bit when you talk about the power of decentralization? And you mentioned a little bit about we have these mechanisms and how we do it, and we're going to dive deeper. But from where you sit, what is the power in decentralization? Why is it so important?
Yeah. This is me personally, but also from a legal perspective. A centralized authority can own and control data and can own and control actionability, meaning if they own the data, they can go in and change the data. They can send the data, ship the data, hide the data, store the data. They can do that. And companies are almost all by nature centralized. Governmental authorities are also centralized. Banking is mostly centralized. What you do with the blockchain, because you're going out into a community of people that are supporting the storage and transaction of that data, is you decentralize that. So no one company, no one governmental power, no one person can control things in a manner that might be bad for other members participating in whatever endeavor that is. And so that's what's cool about blockchain is it decentralizes. That's why you hear terms like decentralized finance, DeFi, or decentralized exchanges, where all of those are things that aren't controlled by a centralized authority. And in this instance, the Grow blockchain is a decentralized chain that's governed by the node owners themselves. And although Grow United, the company, produces really cool products, Grow United can't control it. That data is apart and separate from them. And that's what is powerful, is because when the Grow node owners operate in that network, they have the ability to control how that network will operate.
Perfect. Thank you. We've talked about nodes. There might be someone here listening that is new. Can you give a brief definition of a node and then why we run nodes and what are the benefits of being someone that owns that node software and then chooses to run it?
Yeah. And I'm going to couch that in terms of proof of action, right? And I might start with Bitcoin. Everybody knows what Bitcoin is. And Bitcoin operates with miners and nodes that validate transactions, right? And it works off of a consensus mechanism, meaning for a new block to be written, for new data to actually be there and be verified that the community trusts, there has to be consensus, and it operates off of a proof of work consensus. When the work is performed and that proof of the work being performed happens, then it writes it to the chain. The problem with Bitcoin, and there's a lot of upside to Bitcoin right now. If you're following Bitcoin, there's definitely a lot of upside to Bitcoin. However,
as we record this right now, I'm just going to look this up for fun, for posterity's sake. Yeah. Right now, Bitcoin is at $89,853.
There you go.
On November 15th, 2024.
And Bitcoin was novel. It really introduced like an actual reality of what you could do with a chained bit of data, a blockchain bit of data. That's cool. But the problem is it's proof of work consensus. So it's super energy hogging and it's time constrained because you have to prove the whole chain to make sure that it works. Okay. Then a few years later, let's just talk about blockchain to give people an understanding. Ethereum came along and introduced this concept of smart contracts, which allows you to build in algorithmic operations that just operate by a computer. There's no human that needs to happen. And then as long as condition A is met, condition B will happen, right? And that's really cool because that allowed you to do a lot of more functionality with your blockchains. And Ethereum moved to a proof of stake consensus mechanism. So as long as someone staked enough Ethereum, then they could have the ability to run the validation to have the node be able to support validating and confirming the data that was going on the chain. Really, it's all about data. That sounds stupid and nerdy, but hey, I'm a nerd at heart, and so that's what it is. That's cool. But in the real world, when we're doing real world things, we're buying meat at the grocery store, we're raising cattle, we're converting, refuse into reusable carbon. Those are real world actions. And the cool thing about this technology and the stack of the technology that Grow United, the company, is tapping into through the Grow blockchain is a consensus mechanism called proof of action. And that's where these nodes that community members are purchasing are important because the nodes help facilitate the action being written to chain. So as real world actions occur, those actions are able to be recorded into an immutable ledger, which then is distributed and written to chain. And that is something that's governed by a smart contract. And Grow United, the company, does not control that. The community controls that. And the nice thing is now you're taking real world actions, things that people are doing, businesses are doing, and people are doing. And those actions can be incentivized and they can have a blockchain of substance. Now, Bitcoin is cool, but really in the air, in reality, it's just a really cool representation of air. Like it's nothing. It's a digital representation, but it's tied to a blockchain. Grow blockchain not only has that blockchain technology, but its consensus is tied to actual substance of action. And then Grow United, the company, comes along and is actually selling products that you can tie to that action and tie to the chain with the tokens associated with that chain. So that is really, in my opinion, really cool. And so that's the way to understand those nodes, is they're facilitating the actual data being recorded, the distribution of the daily actions being recorded on chain, so that ultimately that decentralized chain of data can be relative to daily actions by people in the community.
I love it. I love it. And I think to even simple it down, it's we're taking real world actions that I do or you do or animals do, and we're taking that data and we're putting it on chain and we're rewarding people for those actions. And
Yep.
without the node, none of that can happen. None of it. And
Yep.
so we have these nodes. We have over 26, almost 27,000 nodes running right now globally on the Grow blockchain, which is really cool. And of all of those people that are running those nodes, we've mentioned the word consensus a couple of times, and how those node owners are actually part of deciding what happens on the blockchain. Can you talk about consensus and some of the rights that are and responsibilities that exist as a node owner, and how do I get involved with the blockchain in that sense?
Love it. And there's two things about consensus. There's consensus in the computer programming world, and that's consensus among the computers talking to themselves. So you have to have that kind of consensus. And then there's consensus among the people that matter more. No matter what anyone tells you, people matter more than AI. AI is very cool, and I know you guys are using some of that. But when we talk about consensus among the people, one thing that is really cool about the Grow community is that the Grow community operates under a framework. It's not just anarchy. It's not just anyone can do anything, because if you have that, power players can take advantage of people. And so the Grow community operates and functions under a charter. When you purchase a node, you agree to abide by a charter. It's a set of rules, like a constitution. If you're a member of a citizen of the United States, you function under the United States Constitution, which constitutes and sets up the laws. So there's a charter that governs how the Grow node network community functions. And that charter represents a distributed governance framework. So you have a whole distributed network of node owners, and there's a governance framework set up by that charter. We call that the DGF. And that allows the whole Grow node network to do things as a body, as a DGF. And it allows them to then choose to vote on things. We want to do this. We want to open up carbon credits to do this. We want to do whatever the community wants to do. As a node owner, you have the ability to say, yes, we want our database to be able to facilitate this real world action. And they vote on that. And that vote, the cool thing about that vote is it's on chain. Everyone can see it. Everyone votes with their nodal community rights, and no one can hack it. No one can touch it. There's no hanging chads, so to speak. And as a community member, you can do that. And so that's really cool, because you function and operate as a community. And quite frankly, sorry, Will, but the community can actually do things contrary to what Grow United, the company, wants to do. That's the power of the community. So when you're purchasing those nodes as a community member, you actually have power as a joint community to do things that the company can't do, because like I said, the company doesn't control the blockchain.
It's beautiful. We've talked and mentioned about Bitcoin and how the miners run, and then Bitcoin exists because for running those nodes, those miners, that data and processing it so things go on chain, the reward is this cryptographic token. And inside of the Grow blockchain, we follow a similar model to where as these nodes are run, they're mining every day these daily rewards, which is our utility token, the Grow native token. Can you talk about, from a legal perspective, what is that token? What can and cannot it do? And as a community of node owners, not just Grow United, what is our goal and purpose with that crypto?
Yeah, that's great. So there's different forms of cryptographic assets. And let's just start with one that people know of. It's called cryptocurrency. and it's a cryptographic asset designed to be transferred as a currency. That's what Bitcoin is. Its function, its role is as a cryptographic currency. And in that sense, it's not tied to any substance. It's not tied to any real world action. It's a floating currency. And by the way, there's a lot of value in that. And as Will showed the price before, that's great because all currencies to some extent are floating, right? Even fiat currencies are floating and they're backed by what people's belief is in the currency. There's also what are called utility tokens, where the token isn't necessarily primarily designed as an exchange of currency. It's designed to provide utility amongst a community. And so that is the focus of the Grow Digital Reward. We call them Grow Digital Rewards because it's a digital reward for facilitating the actions that the community supports, right? And so we've chosen to go that route primarily for two reasons. Because we want the community members to leverage and take advantage of that utility. For example, buying something at a discount is using Grow tokens is the utility associated with the token. So you could buy meat at this price, or you could buy meat at this price using the Grow token. And as a community member with that token, the utility is you get the discount. And that's where it's really cool because then community members are incentivized to take that and go viral because it's like, look, you're getting all this utility. Not only can you transact it, but you can get utility with it. One of the other reasons is because we've chosen to make sure that these tokens have a rule book that they're playing by. And right now, they're sanctioned as utility tokens under Swiss regulation. In the United States right now, I'm going to be blunt, it's up and down. Basically, if you're playing in the blockchain space, everyone's getting sued. And there's really not a lot of certainty. And so as a law firm, as a lawyer, I've guided these DGFs and the companies that build the products based on them to focus on the utility side. And that would lead me to another aspect of why this is a really cool thing for node owners to know is not only are the tokens utility tokens, they're not cryptocurrencies, but the nodes themselves are not securities. In my guided opinion, and this is why. Because what is a node? A node is software. If Will was buying a node, he would go out and he would transact with Grow United to purchase a license for this node. And that node, he can choose to load it on his personal computer. He can choose to load it on a virtual server. And he can choose to turn it on or turn it off. That's what I do with Microsoft Office. I could choose to run Excel or not run Excel. That's my choice. It's software. And so these nodes, they're not securities. When you're purchasing a node, you're not buying an interest in Grow United, the company. Nothing. That is not an interest in the company at all. You don't get any right to grow. In fact, the cool thing is, and this is going to suck for Will, but 5 years from now, the community could be rocking. These nodes could be running. They're doing all kinds of things. You're running your software, and for whatever reason, Will screws everything up and Grow United, the company, tanks, but there's another company that can come on. That can totally happen. And the community's great because they're not up and down based on their interest in the company because they're just running software that supports, remember, the community, the network of node owners. And so these nodes that we're buying, they are software. They are not securities. And the tokens that are issued, the digital rewards that are you're rewarding node owners for supporting the community by running their software, they're utility tokens. Those are all purposeful decisions that these communities are set up with and have voted to operate under so that they're basically playing by a rule book and so that they can take advantage of the blockchain technology without having guns pointed at them by regulatory bodies that are a little bit wild right now.
Thank you. That's beautiful, John. I think it answers a lot of questions because we're really stepping into a new world. When most people look at even Bitcoin, Ethereum, or blockchain, it's like, I have no idea what we're even talking about. I don't know how to get to that. And so the goal of this podcast is to help eliminate a lot of those. And I want to dive a little bit deeper because we started talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and utility tokens. And right now, if I were to go look at Grow, I could go to CoinMarketCap right now and I could see a value of that token tied to a US dollar value. and I can see that go up and down on a daily basis. What makes that change, and what can we as a community do to have some amount of effect in that change? And how does that change, and how should we be thinking about that as community members?
Yeah, two things. Likely on CoinMarketCap, you're looking at a bridged version of that token. You're likely looking at the ERC Ethereum bridged version of that token, which is one thing I'm just going to talk about, and then I'll transition to your question. I think community members should recognize they're supporting a layer one true blockchain. The Grow tokens, the digital rewards, the Grow digital rewards that they receive for supporting the community, running their software, those are native to that layer one blockchain. They're not dependent upon other blockchains. Now, the nice thing is entities can build bridges, which allows that native digital reward to be bridged to another blockchain platform like Ethereum, and then it can be traded and moved and up and all over the place on that Ethereum platform, and also can be bridged to other platforms like Binance or Solana, and those bridges are in the works. They're working on, according to my understanding, Will would maybe know better, but the bridges are in the works, which is really cool. So this community doesn't depend upon some extraneous blockchain, but can tap into other blockchain platforms, Binance, Ethereum, and that's really cool. So then that gets us to value. So when you're looking at CoinMarketCap and you're trying to determine a value of a token, it really comes down to supply and demand. It's how much token is available, how much demand is based upon that available supply, and how much volume there is to trade that. And as that moves up and down, and there's a total market cap for everything, and there's a daily trading volume, that will determine, the market determines, we really like the Ethereum bridged version of this native Grow token. And so we want to trade it more. We want to use it more. And the more people want to buy it so that they could use it, the more value is. That's how those tokens work. The more people that want to use Bitcoin and transact Bitcoin, the higher Bitcoin goes. It's the same thing with when you talk about currencies trading against themselves. The more people want to use the Japanese yen, the more the yen goes up against, the euro. And that's how those tokens work and have valuation. It's really what people demand based on the available supply and the total volume there is to move that around. So that's how it gets its value. I'm going to say this bluntly. Grow United, the company, doesn't affect that value. That's the market. What Grow United, the company, can do is produce really cool products and really cool services that can utilize that utility, right? So if you want to go buy products, carbon credit products, or meat, and then you want to use that utility and the discount for using that Grow token, then that creates volume, which is cool. So the way Grow United, the company, can do it is they can make cool products and services, but the actual value of the token itself, they can't do that. And that's another thing that makes this decentralized. It's like no one can really control centrally the value of Bitcoin. And that is the same with Grow United tokens on like CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko. When you look at those are floating based on supply and demand.
And the way that we can affect that as not only Grow United, where I spend most of my time building products and services and trying to grow the community, but also as day-to-day community members of the Grow blockchain, is getting more people involved, increasing the demand that is there for the utility of the token in whatever project that we have. And I like to describe the blockchain as this center technological piece that is surrounded by a community that has an infinite number of possible use cases. And our job as people, the value that we bring to the technology, is using it in the best ways that we know how. And the more that we use it and the more people that we get using it, then generally the greater the value of those utility tokens can go, because it's a very simple supply and demand curve. And we just have to get people leveraging that tech.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin 10 years ago was a few $100. Bitcoin now is $90,000, and it's because more people are seeing the usefulness in that cryptocurrency. And you're exactly right, Will. As the Grow community gets the word out there on the value of utilizing the Grow digital reward and the utility associated with that, then more people will have use cases for it. And it is very likely, just like Bitcoin, that it's going to want to transact more, and it's based on supply and demand. So that's really perfect. Yeah.
I love it. I want to add, I think a lot about the decentralization of data, and we spoke to that a little bit at the beginning. And when we look at specific farm and agricultural use cases of that, most of us in general don't want to give our data up. Most producers don't want to give their data up, especially to a centralized source, which is going to use that for any amount of income or profit that they can make, and oftentimes use it against whoever is providing that data to then create new contracts or different things that are not actually in their best case. And one of the other things I like to think about when we talk about the utility of the blockchain itself is the decentralization of the data that proves how we are going to nourish the world in the best way. Because I believe that many of the decisions that we make in as a collective, as society, but also internally are generally biased, and they're biased towards the things and the data that are in front of us. And so one of the things that's really important to me as we think about growing the blockchain, growing the value of everything within it is this hub of decentralized data that then can be shared and provided to see what actually is the best way to nourish the world, nourish the soil, nourish the animals, the plants, and ourselves. And the better we do that, the more value we can provide, because we're actually creating, and you can correct me on words, but we're creating our own economy based on what we're putting into the blockchain. And the larger that is, the more good we can do.
Totally agree. Totally agree. In fact, I like that notion of creating an economy, right? Because what you've created is a market for blockchain-based transactions, right? And some of those could be tracking from seed to feed to animal to to the butcher to the store, right? And all of that can be tracked on chain. And each one of those transactions can have a market value, and the community can support that. Same thing with the way carbon credit, you've got the generation of the carbon reduction, and then you've got the creditization and the tokenization. And your blockchain is perfect as a community member to recognize that the Grow blockchain can support all those data transactions. And then companies like Grow United can provide products that facilitate that, like the Farm Tracer product you guys have. It does that tracking, and it utilizes the blockchain that the community supports. And that's a great way to get out there and support the world. This really does provide, the word I like is transparency. Because, in your use case, when someone says they're truly organic or, range fed or whatever, you have to trust them. You have to trust their central description. If you toss that data based on the evidence to prove that onto a transparent blockchain, it's trustless. That's one thing as a node owner to recognize. Blockchains are trustless. You don't have to trust this entity or this individual or this organization, because the chain itself is transparent and provides all aspects of the trust. So when you have a trustless mechanism, everyone can trust it, and then you don't have to be like, well, I don't know if that farmer was telling the truth, or I don't know if that company was telling the truth, because that centralized aspect of trust gets decentralized through a blockchain that supports that.
Love it. I have a concept that I think through a lot when I think about how do we be successful? How do we be successful as a blockchain? How do we be successful at Grow United, trying to drive utility to that blockchain? And I think about the order of operations of making all of this successful. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and expand on kind of my thoughts on it. Because when I think about it, very often, and I talk to producers and people, in fact, I do this grow bet that if you've heard me present at all, you probably heard it, but I have everybody raise their hand and say, if you want a Bitcoin today, raise your hand. Well, everybody, especially today, wants a Bitcoin. I say, okay, I'll send you a Bitcoin today if you could think about the last 72 hours and all the food that you've eaten in that time, everybody keeps their hand raised. Say, okay, if you could tell me where that food came from, what went into either raising or growing it, the carbon or biodiversity footprint of that food, so you know exactly how it was grown, and then how did it nourish the soil that it was in, I'll send you the Bitcoin. Well, nobody can prove all of that. That's what we want to do. That's how we leverage the transparency and trust around the blockchain. And I haven't talked to anyone in the world over the last 2 years that doesn't want that to happen. And we can do it. We can do it with the technology that we have. However, we have to do it at scale, and there's a lot of problems to do that. And also, we have to have the supply and the demand and a community large enough to drive the economy to make all of this work. And so when you think about that and where we sit today, you kind of know where we are at Grow and as a blockchain world. What would you say to the community of the best things that we can do right now? And it's November 15th, 2024. So let's just say for the next 6 months, what can we do to get us the closest to achieving that goal in the long term?
Yeah. Wow. I like the question. I would start by saying that the community needs to recognize they're sitting on a technology that is novel, that no one else has, and especially the proof of action, because the real world action can then be turned into incentivization. How can I incentivize the farmer? How can I incentivize the butcher? How can I incentivize the carbon producer? How can I incentivize the person that creates carbon that can, stuff that can be act as a carbon credit? And through those incentives on real world actions that can be transferred as data points through the Grow blockchain, then you can have a lot of, like I did like your example of like the hub, and then it can go this way. It's because it's decentralized. So the more community members look towards what are the real world actions that we can incentivize people's behavior by, perhaps as you take that action, you can earn a Grow digital reward. As you do this action, as you transact this data, you can earn Grow digital rewards. And then as people earn those Grow digital rewards, on the other side, you can incentivize by offering products and services that the community can get out there and evangelize and say. And not only that, but you can have the utility of purchasing these products and services as a discount, because you can also trust the sales side of this as well. And so I like the action, incentivizing action. And the more the community member recognizes the action and how that ties into everything that people are doing, then when you take that incentivization, it makes people want to do it. Because otherwise, what do I care? I'm just a normal person. But if I'm incentivized to do it, and this blockchain tech has proof of action to do that, then you can tap right into that. And as a community, it's virality, right? Everyone starts to be incentivized in so many ways, and it starts to just go like this. So
I love that, John. It makes me think this proof of action protocol and the things that we've talked about today, of a Henry Ford quote that says something along the lines of, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, when he was making the Model T Ford. And by what you just said, everything we've talked about today, you said the word novel. It is new. Most people, when they talk about solving the problems that we know exist, that we don't know where our food comes from, we're not nourishing the world at scale, we have big problems in all of this specter. The past ways of trying to solve it have not worked. We have to find a new way. And this blockchain and this proof of action, in my opinion, is the Model T Ford. It's the automobile that is going away from horses and coming into a brand new innovation. We have it. We have the way to do it. And the number one thing we can do right now at this point in time is share this message with as many people as possible and get as many actions on the chain as possible. Because the more actions and the more inputs we have on the chain, the greater the demand is. And the greater we can drive the demand, the greater our ability to create new innovations and new plugs into the blockchain is, which then solves all of the problems that we all want to solve. However, if we don't get the engine running, we never get the car. And the engine running is the community of people around the world that understand the things we've talked about, understand how to build upon it, so that actually, I love the the self-prophecy or fulfilling prophecy that you said. I hope one day, and hopefully that is sooner than later, that nobody knows who I am. And nobody knows who Grow United is, because so many people are building really cool things on the blockchain and leveraging the community and the technology that it doesn't matter what we did at the beginning, right? That's the goal. And I think if we start there, that's the little hinge that moves a very, very massive door and changes everything that we have in the mission to nourish the world.
Very cool. I love it. And I would just add that you guys are acting in a very compliant manner. I love the fact that your company, before you do anything, you're like, how's this going to affect things? You reach out to me as an attorney, and I can be like, okay, this is how I would handle that so that it's compliant, so that you're not misleading, so that you're clear. And I do like your focus as it's about the community. It's about the DGF. It's about that growth in a decentralized manner. Because I like it. I love that analogy. This is the automobile. We're moving away from centralized horses that are all strapped together to autonomous automobiles that are able to just go wherever they want, which is great. So cool.
And take data so that we know where we should go, and have it open source and trustless, as you say, and a little bit less bias, which I think will be really, really good for the integrity of the entire world. So Jon, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your last piece. Everyone, please like and share this with anyone that you can. This is information that I believe will change the world. The things that we're talking about today, these are some of the coolest conversations that we get to have. So please spread it with as many people as possible. Listen to other episodes of the podcast and be ready for many, many more. Thank you, Jon. I appreciate you.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this episode. Remember, it will take a community of us to do the best in the world and truly nourish not only ourselves, but the planet, the atmosphere, the soil, the plants, and the animals on it. So make sure you spread this message anywhere that you can.